Hey, Helen.
How's it, Rob? We are week 6.
I
We're
know.
over the hump. And unfortunately, a couple of people are now having to look at a little bit of assessment because at the end of the term, we need these lovely things called reports.
Absolutely. And it's been quite hectic up until now. And so assessments
Galas,
are just...
athletics,
Totally.
and now we're going to have to just slam something together.
Yes.
And so today we thought we'd have a look at something that would be useful, rubrics, and Coach in the class use a lot of rubrics because we like the way it defines everything.
Yeah.
So should we just have a little look at what we want to tell you about our rubrics today?
Stunning. Divine.
So starting off, rubrics are obviously there so that everybody knows exactly what's being assessed.
Yeah.
What is expected, what are you expecting, how are you going to mark them, and it's also good for self-assessment. If you want children to self-assess themselves, they can actually do the rubric before you actually do it.
Yeah, and it teaches them to start assessing their own work for quality and have their on the right track before they hand it in. And actually we need to teach that skill.
And the most important aspect here is that everybody knows what to expect.
Yes.
And what are you going to be marked on. That's important. And then, of course, rubrics are great when you're dealing with creative. You're trying to evaluate creative things because it lets the children know what you're going to evaluate them on, and also for other teachers. So that you're all using the same criteria to mark the children. So multiple teachers hopefully can come up with a similar-ish mark.
And I think that's also one of the reasons we use them in Coach in the Class, because so many different teachers are using our material. Without a rubric, it would be hard for them to judge, is this good, is this not good, is the child on track? So giving a rubric allows any teacher to go, yes, this was the expectation for this lesson.
And the child knows what the expectation was. And then, of course, we love this one, making assessing and marking easier and quicker for teachers.
Yes, you don't have to wonder.
No, and it's a tick box, and particularly if it's something where there is opinion involved.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go and have a look at some. The first one we're looking at is quite an easy one. This you could probably just tick mark yourself, but because we are not with you, we often give a little rubric because what's actually very nice in this is that it's blocked off, that there's only 1 mark for the title, there's 2 marks for the next thing, there's 4 marks to name the joints and whatever. So it's very clear where your marks are coming from. And once again, it tells the children exactly what we wanted in this drawing.
Exactly. And this is a good way for them to peer assess each other, because we also want to start teaching them
this
that.
Would be great because it's short, easy, very concise, and this would be great for peer assessment. I like that one. Okay. And perhaps now going a little bit more, this is one where we are looking at the design process. So not only we're asking questions about the design process, we also then want them to create a drawing of their design. And so notice a lot of the second things are all to do with the picture that they have to draw and create.
Yeah, and it's one of those, it's a 1 or a 0. It's a yes, no kind of thing. So it's not complicated. And is it a 2 or a 3? It's just yes or no.
So it's always keeping your marking simple. This was the practical assessment.
I love the guy on the right, by the way.
He is rather cheeky, and where you had asked them to, in fact, we asked them to design a skeleton using the tubes, which is what the curriculum asks. And there weren't too many instructions because actually you handed out the rubric with the task.
Exactly.
So that you could see exactly what was required and where you were going to get marked. So right from the get-go, you knew how to design it, what you were being credited for. You had to use the paper. You couldn't swap it over. And so it just makes for lack of confusion. And there's no one coming and saying, I didn't really know.
Yes, and exactly. And especially for anxious children or ones that sort of worry about, did they listen properly or did they miss something? It's all there.
And again, it's a yes, no, yes, no. Yes, he reached that criteria. No, he didn't. And so he's not going to get the mark. No. And so also for children, when they get feedback, they can see exactly where they went wrong.
Exactly. And where they went right.
Exactly. And so that's the other reason for using these, is that children can see where they went wrong and right. It's not just you got 20 out of 30. Why? Where did I go wrong? Well, you can see where you went wrong. Yeah. So it's lots of feedback. This is where now when we use it for creative assessment. Where,
I love these.
It's very difficult to assess this was to design an animal, because their grade 4s were doing, what are they doing, vertebrates or something like that. And so they had to design an animal. But then here we're looking at the creative criteria about elaboration, fluency, flexibility. All of that's coming into it. Those are creative criteria. And then, of course, you know what the topic is.
And we've also given them a toolbar, a creative tool, and we're assessing have they used the tool, because we want them to develop their creative thinking tools. So an assessment must always point out to the children what the learning is. So, and rubrics are great at doing that. This is what you are learning, and this
so
is what you assess.
Did you make something bigger? Did you remove something? And that's exactly what they were asked to do. And have you listened to the topic? So this is just a little bit bigger. Instead of using the bar, we're now using Scamper, which is the proper tool.
Yeah. And this is from grade 5, 4th term material. And again, it's all about using that and developing that creative thinking skill.
To design an emblem, and then the rubric looked something like this.
And again, quite detailed in terms of, did you use Scamper? At least 5 new symbols. So that would have been part of the instructions. And so whatever the instructions are, those are the criteria you need to assess. So if you're designing your own rubric, make sure you know what you want to assess before you design the rubric, or write the instructions.
So literally, you can take the instructions and convert them into a rubric.
Exactly.
Or
other way around.
Leave out the write the instructions, leave them out, put the rubric in, and then you know. So what do you want from this task? So you're almost going to the end to design this.
Exactly, and that's what we should be doing, is looking at what do we want in the end?
What do we want to achieve? What's our goal? What's our
aim?
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So that is quite a complex one, but we're getting a little bit more involved as we go along. So this was another creative task where they were asked to design a logo for, I think it was for a political party.
Yes.
Look, they were doing democracy grade 6.
Yeah, grade 6 democracy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can see that this rubric has got sort of all those opinions like you have when you mark an essay.
Exactly.
And you would score 1, 2, 3. So it's a little bit more complex, but it takes away the guess game.
Totally. And it makes it easy to kind of differentiate between who designed a really good logo and who didn't really get the idea at all.
And the kids, once again, can see exactly where they fell short. Amazing. I love this. So this is quite a long task.
Yeah, it's a big grade 6 project.
It was, and it took quite a few, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, didn't it?
Longer.
Okay. And they were creating a web page, if I'm correct?
Yes, so this is the grade 6 history research project that they have to do in the 3rd term.
Okay.
And it's about leaders in democracy. And there's quite a few, from the CAPS document, there's quite a few criteria involved that they want the children to have in the research project. And so it does take a bit of time to put a few of the skills in place and give them time to go and research properly. So it's a big task.
And I notice here that this is for ZTech and for Tech Loaded.
Yes.
And so how would they have varied?
So the ZTech one would have been something that was maybe done, it would have been paper-based. The research would have been presented
you'd
on
have
a
to
poster,
books.
Or
yes.
On a poster, or handwritten, doesn't matter, but on a poster, in a flip file, something that was a hard copy. Whereas the Tech Loaded one, the children actually designed Google websites. Google Sites websites.
Yes.
So that's another whole skill. And Google Sites, if you are a Tech Loaded school or you have a computer lab, Google Sites is an amazing tool for children to learn. It's super easy. It's drop and drag. The templates, the kids had a ball doing
I remember this. They absolutely loved it. And then obviously your rubric is going to be quite complex for this one.
Because it's a big project and it's multifaceted, and there's a lot of different sort of things, criteria that the children had to have a timeline, and they had to have pictures, and they had to have various bits of information about early life and later life, and that to have a number of sources, and that to have credited the sources correctly. So that's why the rubric is a lot more complicated and in-depth than just a tick box, but it made it super simple to mark those very big projects.
And not where it's is it objective?
Yes, it was a lot easier.
What it was, so that different teachers could mark it.
And in fact, so I marked all these projects, but what I did was, because the boys had the the rubric before in advance, I gave them a mark on the rubric, and then I gave them an extra week if they wanted to So there was a hand-in date, and they could hand it in a week early and get feedback on the rubric, fix up what they'd done, what they'd sort of fallen short on, and resubmit it as a final.
Oh, I remember that. And that's the pedagogy of correction.
Yes.
I remember that. And some kids didn't even bother to submit something.
And some resubmitted 2 or 3 times.
I remember that little boy who wanted it perfect. Hey?
Yeah.
And then he still asked you why he lost 2 marks or something.
Yes.
I love that kind of perfectionism. Ah, yes.
And it was great because that rubric really made it easy for them to see, oh, I missed that thing, or oh, I only had 2 sources, I needed 4.
And it's a real dedicated teacher who marks it twice. So I hope you marked it very quickly the first time.
No, but that's why it's easy to use the rubric.
And it would even be nice if you marked it with them present.
Yes.
So you had the rubric in front of you, you marked it, and you said, look, and then you knew exactly where to go and fix it up.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's an awesome way. That's really the way assessment should be, which is in an ideal world. And it's not always ideal.
No, but this was a big project and it deserved a lot of attention.
Yes.
So that's why we did it.
So we like rubrics because they cut out subjective people's thinking.
And guesswork.
The kids know exactly what's required of them. Parents can see where their kids went wrong.
Yeah.
And so it's quite open and
yeah, it's literally you can use a rubric for anything. So we've just recently used a history rubric for an English assessment. We just adapted it. So that's also the thing. Our coaching the class rubrics are easily adaptable to different subjects.
And I particularly love them for creative work to try and take out the guesswork. So hopefully with your assessments, if you need a rubric, coaching the class have lots because we do continuous assessment. So at least each unit has got at least 3 or 4 rubrics in it.
They're loads.
Yeah. And you can adapt those rubrics to suit any lesson, any test.
Super. So we'll see you again next week.
Good luck.
Have a great weekend. And